Hello once again, my lovely viewers, and welcome to the final video of Spyrovember 2025. So, Spyro 4. Oh boy, what a huge can of worms this very likely on the horizon game is. Speculated on and hoped and prayed for since the announcement and release of Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time 5 years ago, but just never seeming to come for one reason or another. Until now, that is. At least, I strongly think so. With all the hints and teasers we've been getting from game developer Toys for Bob since they started work on their next game in December 2023, and given everything fellow Spyro fan Canadian Guy A has been hearing from them and picking up on, it's highly likely that TFB are indeed working on a new Spyro game. Oh, and by the way, to all those pessimists who are very likely watching this video, who somehow still believe that a new Spyro game is not currently in development, despite tons of evidence out there to prove it is, if you're planning on commenting on this video and saying something like, "Ugh, Spyro's dead, Activision killed it, we're not getting a new game anytime soon, grow up, break up," yeah, the only thing I'll say to you is that I politely ask you to sod off. Oh, and also, please leave Canadian Guy A the hell alone. Yes, Activision have not been very kind to Spyro since Reignited came out, but that does not at all mean that Spyro has little to no chance of coming back anytime soon, because he absolutely does. In fact, I'd argue that Toys for Bob gaining independence from Activision and their jurisdiction only made a new Spyro game even more likely. There's literally nothing that could have stopped them from getting a licensing agreement from Activision/Xbox to use the Spyro IP. So if you're still being a hopeless pessimist that still insists that Spyro 4 is not coming, despite all the evidence that's come out over the past nearly 2 years to prove that it is, then you're just in denial, being an ignorant, mood-killing prick, and I do not want you bringing the vibe down in the comments or Premiere live chat of this video. And don't think I won't delete any comments or messages falsely claiming that Spyro 4 isn't coming, because I absolutely will. So keep your mouth shut and jog on to another video. Alright, sorry about that rant. I just had to vent about those negative Neds and Nellies first, and maybe make them see a bit of sense as well. Right, are they all gone? Yes? Good. Then let's continue. Ever since I heard about the possibility of a new Spyro game, not long after I became a Spyro fan, my hype for it has been through the roof, and that's putting it lightly. So naturally, since then, I've been unable to stop thinking about what could be in this new game, and what I personally would really like to see in it. This video was originally going to be me talking about my ideal Spyro 4, going through everything from first cutscene to 100% completion, but I'd be going into far too much detail with that, and that video would take way too long to make. So instead, I've decided to make this a top 10 list of what I'd like to see in this new Spyro game. There is just one rule for this list though. I'm not including anything that a good chunk of the fandom really wants, but I personally am indifferent about whether or not it gets included. So things like playable Bianca. I know a lot of the fandom really want her as one of the game's playable characters, but I personally do not mind or even care whether she gets included or not, playable or otherwise. I'm only including things I'm really keen to have in Spyro 4, okay? So, with those two things off my chest, without further ado, here are the top 10 things I'd like to see in Spyro 4. For number 10, I'd quite like to see most levels in the game have a day-night cycle. Now, I have to admit, this was not my own idea. When I was on Miharu the Fox's Spyro podcast last year, she was the one who suggested a day-night cycle for Spyro 4.
You know, something I really want to see, and I've talked about it a lot, is a day-night cycle.
Oh.
Or just one level, something akin to Fungi Forest from DK64, where it changes between day and night, and there are different things that you could do, like during the day, or, yeah, during the night. Something also like a Click Clock would.
Why didn't I think of that before? A day-night cycle. Yeah, yeah, that's something I never thought about before. Yeah, I could get behind that.
Yeah, it's like, that's something that I've always liked in games. You know, when it came to Pokemon Gen 2 or Star Fox Adventures. I usually think of Star Fox Adventures.
To my knowledge, no Spyro game before has had a day-night cycle in its levels, and after Miharu suggested it as a feature in Spyro 4, I thought, what the hell, I'd like to see one in the majority of Spyro 4's levels as well. A day-night cycle would definitely add more life and charm to the Spyro series' already breathtaking, charming and lifeful worlds and levels. It would overall make Spyro's world look far more beautiful and make it look more real and believable. If day-night cycles can benefit other games in similar ways, then they can certainly benefit Spyro 4. Don't think there's anything more I can add to this point, so moving on. Let's face it, this is very likely going to be in the game anyway, hence why it isn't any higher up the list, but I'm including it on this list for the sake of it. I, and the vast majority of the fandom I'm sure, would like to see the return of the interchangeable elemental breaths, and not just 4 this time, maybe even 6 or 8. I of course would personally like to see all the standard ones, fire, wind, water, lightning, earth, ice, etc., but also with an extra spin on them, preferably an upgrade system for stronger attacks to take down enemies more efficiently, as well as to unlock new abilities for puzzle solving, and to access new levels and secret areas when backtracking. Perhaps Spyro could even use 2 breaths at once to create brand new breath types, such as combining fire and water breath to make steam breath, and at that point, he might as well be a steam train, eh? Am I right, guys? Yeah, no, that was terrible. Other potential element combos could include water and lightning to deliver an absolutely deadly electric shock to the game's toughest enemies, or wind and ice to freeze even the most scorching hot enemies with blizzard breath. The possibilities are near endless. All I ask is that these elemental abilities are made simply to be breath attacks and puzzle solving tools, and not integrated into a full hand-to-hand melee beat-em-up combat system, like they were in the Legend of Spyro Trilogy. I'll elaborate on this preference of mine later on. For now, on to number 8. My 8th most wanted thing I'd like to see in Spyro 4 is for Nasty Nork to return and have a redemption arc. Yes, I know if any of the Spyro villains are going to return, it's more likely to be Ripto or even the Sorceress and Red, as most Spyro fans want to see one of them return, especially Ripto. But honestly, I think Nasty Nork has far greater returnee potential than any other Spyro villain. He's not a very fleshed out character, so it would be brilliant to see him get far more development in Spyro 4, explaining why he's such an ill-tempered dick, seeing Spyro and the others try to help him work through his anger issues, probably resulting in some very comedic moments, and culminating in him fully reforming, becoming a firm ally of Spyro, and helping him take down the game's main villain. The reason I think Nasty Nork has high redemption arc potential is because he doesn't really seem outright evil to me. Yes, he's ill-tempered and aggressive. Yes, he did trap almost the entire dragon population in Crystal in the very first game, but that just seems like more of an in-the-moment outburst to me, and not a genuinely malicious plot. And yes, he did steal all the dragon's treasure to turn into warriors, but it still didn't seem like he was planning on harming the dragons themselves at all, until Linda very immaturely called him ugly on live television, resulting in his disproportionately aggressive and hateful and equally immature outburst. So yeah, unlike the likes of Ripto, the Sorceress and Red, and especially Malfor, I don't see Nasty Nork as irredeemably evil, just aggressive and ill-tempered with hate that, unlike Ripto, seems to stem more from personal anger issues than genuine malice towards the dragons. However you see Nasty Nork, he's definitely far less evil than most of the Spyro franchise's other main villains, and therefore seems like a prime candidate to have a redemption arc in Spyro 4 to me. I know redemption arcs aren't everyone's thing in storytelling, but it's a trope I really like. It's always nice to see antagonistic characters learn sense and become better people. If the massive popularity and cultural impact of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol doesn't prove that, I don't know what does. And if someone as mean and grouchy as Scrooge can become jolly and kind, then surely Nasty Nork can as well. Look, I know some Spyro fans aren't keen on there being 4 other playable characters alongside Spyro himself in Spyro 3, but you know what? I'm very keen on that. And for that reason, I'd like to see the return of the multiple playable characters gimmick in Spyro 4. So what if it is just a gimmick? It's a very fun one, and that's all that matters. The controls, mechanics, and abilities of Sheila, Sergeant Bird, Bentley, and Agent 9 are all an absolute joy, and their levels are very fun to play as well, especially in Reignited, where all their controls, abilities, and levels were later refined and polished up. So if all 4 of them were that fun to play as in Spyro 3, imagine how Toys for Bob could improve upon them all and their levels in Spyro 4. And like with the elemental breaths, it doesn't even have to be just 4 of them, we could have up to 6 others assisting Spyro on this new adventure. Nor does it have to be only Sheila, Sergeant Bird, Bentley, and Agent 9 returning. I'd honestly be more content with only Sheila and Sergeant Bird coming back, and the other 4 slots filled in by completely different characters. Hunter being playable already works so well in A Hero's Tale, so I'm sure Toys for Bob could do an even better job at making him playable this time around. And going back to what I said about wanting to see Nasty Naught return for a redemption arc, once he fully joins Spyro's side, even Nasty could have a few playable levels much later on in the game as well, taking what was already great about Bentley's controls, mechanics, and abilities, and making them even more fun. Wouldn't it be brilliant to get to use Nasty's staff to trap enemies in Crystal, then smash them? As for the last 2 playable characters I have in mind, the 5th could either be another returnee from one of the previous games, or a completely new character. I don't have anyone else in particular in mind for this slot. And as for the 6th playable character, well, I'll get to her much later on in the video. Just wait and see. So yeah, while I understand that some Spyro fans aren't keen on the multiple playable characters gimmick, I am, massively, and would therefore love to see it return in Spyro 4. I hope all those who also like this gimmick would also like to see it return, and I hope all those who don't like this gimmick can respect our opinions. Now, if there's one thing that the Spyro games prior to the Legend Trilogy were never really that strong on, it was their actual stories. This is very common knowledge among the Spyro fandom at this point, so it's very widely agreed between us all that Spyro 4 should have a far more engaging, interesting, and compelling story than most of the previous Spyro games. Loads of ideas as to what this story itself could be have already been thrown around the fandom, but my take on what I'd like Spyro 4's story to be is a little bit more unorthodox. It's already more or less been confirmed that spies and secret agents are a thing in Spyro's world, so this idea of mine is already not that outlandish. My idea for Spyro 4's plot is that the top secret agent of the Dragon Espionage Agency, or whatever Spyro's world's equivalent of MI6 or the CIA is, ends up getting killed in action, or at least incapacitated, and there are no other agents available to take his place. So the chief of the DEA, knowing full well that Spyro has already single-clawedly saved both the Dragon Worlds and Avalar no less than 3 times before, decides that Spyro's already had all the training he'll ever need and would be the perfect candidate to finish the incapacitated top agent's mission. So they summon Spyro to the DEA's headquarters and, naturally absolutely thrilled about the idea of being a spy, he agrees to join the DEA and, after acquiring several magic and elemental energy-based gadgets from recently appointed DEA quartermaster Sergeant Bird, sets out on his mission to save Dragonkind once again, alongside his mission partner, Agent Ignitus. Yes, I would also like to see Ignitus return, and yes, I've rewritten him as a spy in the Reignited canon. Deal with it. Unfortunately, Spyro's overexcitement about being a spy causes him to partially revert to his eager, overconfident, cocky and somewhat reckless Spyro 1 persona, resulting in him making some very Johnny English-like mistakes, and Ignitus having to constantly rein him in, naturally resulting in some friction and banter between the two in the first half of the game. Eventually though, they both learn to accept and adapt to each other's near polar opposite personalities and ways of doing things, developing a very strong and friendly mentor-student dynamic, and, after venturing to all corners of the Dragon Worlds, including some never-before-seen parts, helping Nasty Nork work through his anger issues, and, with help from the game's several other playable characters, collecting dozens of the game's main collectibles, orbs of pure, dark, destructive energy, they uncover a conspiracy masterminded by 3 returnee villains. Ripto, who is revealed to have survived plunging into the lava pool at the end of Spyro 2, albeit with extremely deep and obvious burns, scalds and scars, highly intelligent tech wizard Red, and, at the centre of it all, disgraced Dragon Air Force Commander Malfor. They plan to either force the King of the Dragon Worlds to abdicate and hand over the throne to Malfor, or, if the King refuses, use the destructive energy orbs to annihilate all 5 Dragon Worlds. Yes, I know it's not at all a story you'd expect from a Spyro game, but honestly, I really like the idea of Spyro being brought on as a sort of reserve mercenary spy for his next adventure. His name is Spyro, after all. Hey, get it? Anyone?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Alright, fine, that joke was lame. And yes, I'm more than confident that there are many clever ways an action spy thriller storyline could work in a fantasy setting, such as I suggested, having most of the gadgets make extensive use of magic or elemental energy, one of which could be a device that gives Spyro all the different elemental breath attacks I've already said I'd like to see make a comeback. Or a flight level about halfway through the game that plays out like a James Bond car chase, where you control Spyro chasing down Ripto riding Red. If you have any other ideas as to how a spy storyline could work in the Spyro universe, please do tell me in the comments. While I completely understand that most Spyro fans would like to see a more conventional fantasy storyline in Spyro 4, I personally feel that a more untraditional and much different storyline from what most people would expect from Spyro would work best this time around. Whatever Spyro 4's plot ends up being though, I think I speak for the whole fandom when I say we'd like it to be far more gripping, engaging, interesting, exciting and thrilling than any non-Legend of Spyro game before now. Just please make it lighthearted and fun, and not too epic, serious, dark and depressing, like the LOS games were most of the time. Okay, Toys for Bob? You understand? Thank you! Now for number 5, I'd like to see a lot, and I mean a lot, of diverse and extremely fun collectible rewarding minigames in Spyro 4. I know some Spyro fans don't like Spyro 2 and 3's excessive amount of minigames, but for me and many other fans, the minigames are one of the many essential, core parts of what makes Spyro 2 and 3 two of our favourite games of all time. What I'd like to see Spyro 4 do is take what made 2 and 3's minigames so fun yet challenging, and make them even better, getting rid of all the minigames that simply didn't work, such as the Yeti boxing, and replacing them with minigames that not only match the levels of enjoyment the ones in Spyro 2 and 3 had to offer, but exceed them as well. One minigame idea I've had for Spyro 4 in particular is a bubble bouncing minigame, where Spyro and a few other playable characters are put into large, extra strong, almost unpoppable bubbles, which they can only move around in by bouncing in them. In fact, it would be even better if there was an entire realm revolving around this bubble bouncing gimmick. I would call it Toxic Forest, where the air is poisonous to anyone aside from the realm's local inhabitants, and all outside visitors have to be put into bubbles to protect them from the toxic air. The only quote-unquote drawback of this, of course, being that anyone put into these bubbles can't walk normally, and instead has to move around by bouncing in the bubble for as long as they're in it. But this isn't really a drawback though, as, for almost everyone put into them, Spyro and his friends included, bouncing in these bubbles is actually extremely fun and feels absolutely amazing. There are several minigame ideas Toys for Bob could use this bubble bouncing gimmick as the basis for. One of which could be a sort of callback to Colossus's hockey minigames in Spyro 2, in which two teams would bounce around in their bubbles and try to knock each other into goals, with Spyro of course being rewarded with a destructive energy orb for each bubble bouncing game his team wins. There could also be a minigame where Spyro needs to take out a certain number of enemies within a time limit by bouncing on them to flatten them. Again, I'd love to hear any other ideas you may have for this bubble bouncing gimmick in the comics. And of course any other completely different minigame ideas never used in any other Spyro game before you may have. And again, while I understand that some Spyro fans aren't that keen on the many minigames of Spyro 2 through to A Hero's Tale, many other Spyro fans, myself included, feel that Spyro 4 simply would not be complete without a very large collection of mini-games that are far more enjoyable than in any other Spyro game before. Again, I hope you can at least respect our opinions on this. While we're on the subject of realms and mini-games, I'd like to mention that very large, fully open, sprawling homeworlds and levels, larger than any other ever before seen in the Spyro series, is a very popular requested feature that the vast majority of Spyro fans would like to see in Spyro 4. And you know what? After hearing them out on this request of theirs, I too would like to see this in the game. When the original Spyro 1 first came out on the PS1 in 1998, its large, open, extremely detailed 32-bit 3D worlds, rarely seen in PS1 games before then, were one of the game's main selling points, and were a key factor in helping to drive up the game's high sales numbers, make the Spyro series as a whole as beloved as it is today, and make it a genuine competitor with Crash Bandicoot and its far more restrictive, linear, corridor-esque levels. While Spyro 1's level design was revolutionary at the time, keep in mind that the PS1, arguably the most advanced video game console ever created at the time, still had its limitations, and as such, while the game's levels were very large and open, there was still a limit to how big and detailed they could be. Keep in mind that PS1 CDs can only hold up to 660 megabytes of data. Nowadays, PS5 and Xbox Series X and S 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray discs can hold up to 100 gigabytes of data, meaning that modern-day video game developers can make their levels as enormous as they like without worrying too much about overloading the game discs. So it's now more than possible for Toys for Bob to dramatically evolve the revolutionary coding and processing power that made the massive, fully open, heavily detailed worlds of Spyro's original PS1 trilogy possible even further. Now, I'm not expecting Spyro 4's homeworlds to be Minecraft size, Christ no. Not only do I not want Spyro 4's levels to be too big, but I also think it's very unreasonable for anyone to expect Minecraft-sized worlds from Spyro 4, but they should still be large enough to at least feel endless, like in many 3D platformers released within the last 10 years, even if charging in a single direction eventually leads Spyro to a level boundary that he can't pass, such as those force field fences found in Stone Hill and Cliff Town. I don't really want the game contained within a single massive map either, such as in Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and the Elder Scrolls games. I'd much rather have the levels be a lot larger, more open and explorable than they were in previous Spyro games, with more collectibles and secrets to find, characters to meet and mini-games to complete, but still retain Spyro's classic exploration structure of several homeworlds containing portals leading to all different unique realm levels. Basically, and this applies for the entire game, not just the homeworlds and levels, while I'm more than open to seeing Toys for Bob try new things with the Spyro formula, I really don't want Spyro 4 straying too far from its roots of the original PS1 and Reignited trilogies. That's all I'm asking of you, Toys for Bob. I'm completely fine with you making Spyro 4 different from its predecessors, but not too different, okay? Got it? Alright, good. Thanks again. Obviously, much larger homeworlds and levels are going to require faster ways of travelling around them, aren't they? And this brings us on to another of the most requested features our Spyro fans would like to see in Spyro 4, free flight. In all the games prior to Legend of Spyro Dawn of the Dragon, it was only possible for Spyro to fly, you know, one of the key abilities dragons are supposed to have, either in dedicated flight levels, or speedways as they're known in Spyro 2, 3 and Enter the Dragonfly, or by using a flight power-up gate in a regular level, which weren't introduced until Spyro 2, and even then only provided a limited amount of flight time, which requires you to pass through the gate again in order to get airborne again. At all other times, Spyro could only use his wings for gliding, but when Dawn of the Dragon came out, you were finally able to take flight as and when you pleased, fly anywhere around any level you like, and stay airborne for as long as you like. If getting to fly over the absolutely breathtaking and gorgeous Valley of Avalar, as either Spyro or Cynder, isn't unbelievably fun and amazing, I don't know what is. And for this reason, us Spyro fans absolutely want to see the free flight mechanic return in Spyro 4. If flying over gorgeous levels created in a PS3 game engine is already an amazing experience, just imagine how fun, beautiful and breathtaking flying over levels created in Unreal Engine 5 would be. Not to mention all the fun mini-games, puzzles and challenges this free flight mechanic could bring to the table. Now I completely understand why Insomniac Games didn't include a free flight mechanic in the original PS1 trilogy. This was because it would have made the platforming and charging around, two of Spyro's other core gameplay mechanics, completely pointless. So confining the flight mechanic to only dedicated levels was the best compromise Insomniac could think of. However, there absolutely are ways to make both the platforming and free flight mechanics coexist in the vast majority of Spyro 4's levels. Perhaps give Spyro an energy level bar this time around, and have it so that flying uses more energy than any of Spyro's other abilities. That way, players will have to keep an eye on Spyro's energy level at all times, and be strategic about when it would be best to stay on the ground for walking, platforming, charging and gliding, and when it would be best to take off, fly and land. Including a free flight mechanic was honestly a very big missed opportunity on Insomniac Games' part. This might be a bit of a stretch, but they possibly could have made an entire fourth Spyro game primarily based around free flight. So just imagine how much more Toys for Bob could add to Spyro 4 if they did include free flight. I really look forward to potentially seeing what Toys for Bob can do to make full use of a free flight mechanic and push it to its absolute limit. I'm very doubtful I'm not alone with this opinion. So you know how I said at the start of this video that I don't really mind or even care whether Bianca comes back or not, let alone whether or not she's playable? Well, that kind of applies for all other potential returnee characters as well. With one massive exception. I wouldn't even mind if none of the characters introduced in the original trilogy besides Spyro and Sparx returned, as long as just one other beloved Spyro character made her return. Whoever and whatever does and doesn't end up being in Spyro 4, I very strongly believe that the game would not be truly complete without the return of Cynder.
Yes, I'm sure many of you saw this coming from miles away. Ever since she was first introduced in Legend of Spyro: A New Beginning, Cynder has become synonymous with Spyro, and absolutely beloved by pretty much the entire fandom due to her tragic backstory and tough and badass, yet innocent and adorable personality. We absolutely love her regardless of whether us fans prefer the original or LOS series, and as such, the vast majority of us implore Toys for Bob to bring her back in Spyro 4. If I were the game's director, I'd reintroduce Cynder with a similar backstory to that of hers in A New Beginning, with Malfoy corrupting, brainwashing and enlarging her against her will with poisonous dark energy. But I'd change it slightly so her backstory's more in line with the Reignited canon, with Malfoy this time forcing Cynder to assist him, Ripto and Red in gathering as many destructive energy orbs as possible, rather than, as in A New Beginning, helping to free Malfoy from convexity and bringing about the end of the world. Cynder would be the first boss fight of my ideal Spyro 4, and, After Spyro defeats, uncorrupts, and purifies her with light energy, she tearfully explains to him how Malfoy corrupted and brainwashed her and forced her to assist him, Ripto, and Red in their evil plans. Spyro, dumbfounded, appalled, and feeling extreme sympathy for Cynder, decides to rescue her before the three villains find her, take her back, and re-corrupt her, and allows Cynder to join him on his spy mission to thwart them. So, in a cutscene heavily inspired by the Thomas Season 3 episode Escape, where Douglas helped Oliver the Western Engine in his great escape from being scrapped, Spyro flies the now extremely weak Cynder out of the arena he fought her in, and helps her in her great escape from Malfoy and his gang. Upon their arrival in the game's second homeworld, Ignitus helps Cynder to recover, and from that point onwards, she becomes a playable character in the game, the mystery sixth one I teased earlier in this video. She wouldn't have her own dedicated side levels though, like all the other playable characters did in Spyro 3 and would in this game. Instead, she'd be playable in all main level areas alongside Spyro, with players able to switch between playing as either Spyro or Cynder at will. They'd have to be strategic about when to switch between them though, as some of Cynder's powers and abilities would be very different to Spyro's, and as such, only Cynder would be able to defeat certain enemies and vice versa with Spyro. One of Cynder's unique abilities could be a tail slice, using her tail tip blade to slice and knock down enemies immune to Spyro's breath attacks, and too big or resilient to attack by charging. She could also have several unique breath and elemental attacks of her own, some based on her Dark Dawn of the Dragon abilities, while others could be brand new elemental abilities and attacks entirely. The possibilities for Cynder's reintroduction in Spyro 4 are endless. Oh, and how can I forget? Even though, as I explained in my unpopular Spyro Opinions video, I'm not keen on the idea of Spyro and Cynder having a romantic relationship, they'd still form an extremely strong friendship in Spyro 4, having loads of cute moments together in cutscenes, as well as Spyro having his own cute moments and interactions with other characters. It simply wouldn't be a Spyro game without these two Dougs being cute. After defeating Malfoy and beating the game, the final cutscene would show Cynder adjusting to her new, dramatically improved life in the Artisan's world, making a few mistakes along the way, but gradually improving her abilities to help the local communities of Artisans with Spyro's help, ending with a freeze frame of them having fun flying alongside each other before fading to the end credits. So yes, I and the vast majority of the fandom believe that Cynder's return is a must for Spyro 4. She's now simply too well known and loved by us Spyro fans to not come back. However Toys for Bob end up deciding to reintroduce her though, I just hope it's an extremely engaging and memorable reintroduction, which gives Cynder as strong and compelling a character arc as she had in the Legend trilogy. Don't you?
I have to be honest with you guys, even if not a single one of the things I've mentioned so far ends up making it into Spyro 4, it wouldn't be that big a deal as long as the number one thing I'd like to see in the game does end up getting implemented. I wouldn't care if there's no day-night cycle, no interchangeable elemental breaths, no nasty Nork, no multiple playable characters, no compelling storyline, no minigames, no fully open and very large worlds, no free flight. I wouldn't even care if Cynder wasn't in the game, as long as Toys for Bob do this one very, very crucial thing that for me would make or break the entire game. My number one biggest wish for Spyro 4 is for it to firmly stick to being a collectathon platformer rigidly adhere to Spyro's roots as such, stick to the gameplay style, mostly light-hearted tone, and overall fun and adventurous vibe of both the original PS1 Insomniac and Reignited trilogies, and, aside from including a few Legend of Spyro returnee characters, especially Cynder, be nothing like the Legend of Spyro trilogy.
Yes, this is exactly what I want Spyro 4 to be more than anything else. I do not want to see any hand-to-hand, button-mashing, melee beat-em-up combat in this game, as was the core gameplay style in the Legend trilogy, nor do I want the story and tone to be too dark, depressing and serious. Obviously there can be a much greater sense of danger and stakes in Spyro 4's story, but they need to be handled in a fun, adventurous, action-packed and thrilling way, not a dark, depressing and overly serious way. There is no way I want Spyro 4's plot and tone getting any darker and more depressing than having Cynder be corrupted, brainwashed and enlarged again. So yeah, a hard no to both LOS-style melee beat-em-up combat and an excessively heavy, dark, depressing and serious story and tone for Spyro 4 from me. Please, Toys for Bob, keep Spyro 4 firmly conformed to the gameplay style and fairly light-hearted tone and vibe of the original PS1 and Reignited trilogies. And if you really must include button-mashing melee beat-em-up combat in the game, if only to appease those fans who actually prefer the Legend trilogy and not make them feel left out, then please, for the love of God, I beg of you, make it optional. Before we start the game, let us choose our preferred enemy attack style and personalize our Spyro 4 experiences. Let the LOS fans have their button-mashing melee combat, but let us original series fans mow down all the enemies, excluding bosses of course, in 1 or 2 hits with either a charge or breath attack. Don't make us constantly hit every single enemy until they die. And let us change attack styles at any point in the game if we wish to. Letting players have this option to choose their preferred attack style is the best way to keep both sides of the fandom happy, in my opinion. At the end of the day, however Spyro 4 turns out, I think all us Spyro fans can agree that Spyro 4 deserves to be the absolute best game in the franchise's history, doing everything it can to make all of us the happiest and most satisfied we can possibly be with it, even if it means making a few compromises, such as including the Legend Trilogy's combat style, but making its use optional and allowing us to attack the game's enemies the classic way if we wish. Whatever you're planning for Spyro 4 Toys for Bob, please, make us all proud, would you? We know you will. We believe in you.
And there we go. Those are the 10 things I'd most like to see in Spyro 4. But what about you guys? Would you like to see any of these things in the game as well? Or do you have any of your own ideas for what you'd like to see in Spyro 4? I'm really interested to know, so please leave all your ideas for the game in the comments. Let's get an interesting conversation going and share our ideas for the game with each other. Just please keep it civilized and mature, alright? If you don't agree with someone else's ideas, please don't get into an aggressive argument with them, okay? As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've all enjoyed Spyrovember 2025 as much as I've enjoyed making it, and I hope you're all looking forward to next year's Spyrovember. Please like, comment, share this video with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to me, TrainLover16, if you haven't already, to stay tuned for my upcoming content. Hype this video if you can. Go and follow me on Instagram and Blue Sky, join my Discord server, check out my eBay profile, go and buy my novel The Spy and the Superdog if you haven't already, and I will see you all in my next video. Goodbye everyone!